Bass Kayak and Beers is sponsored in part by Douglas Rod. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup and locate your nearest authorized dealer. Welcome once again, boys and girls, to the Bass Kayak and Beers segment on the Paddle and Fin Network. We have a great show as always. This time we got Freddie Garza. He runs the B.A.S.S Nation Kayak Series in Georgia, the local trail in Georgia. And we're going to be talking about his role as a tournament director, as well as some of the great stuff he's doing for the youth tournament, both in high school and college for this year and for the future. It is a great episode that I'm really looking forward to share with you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Freddie in to talk about B.A.S.S Nation and his role in the youth tournament. So Freddie, once again, thank you for joining us. We're laughing because we started recording 40 minutes into the recording. I realized I didn't hit the record button. So I've wasted about 30 or 40 minutes of Freddie's time. Full disclosure that he's not getting back and he's still keeping a smile. So Freddie, thank you again. And again, I'm sorry.
That's no problem. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh man, it was I guess. Let's see, Freddie. So let's talk about you, Freddie. First of all, how did you get into fishing, kayak fishing, and how did you become a tournament for one of the biggest names out there when it comes to bass fishing?
So I started kayak fishing in 2009. I'm originally from the Austin, Texas area. Fished honestly, I'd not fished for a lot of years until about 2009, and I'm in the construction industry, so after 2008 was kind of a gray area for me, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do career wise. So I picked up fishing again, and honestly, I did a lot of bank fishing. I didn't have a boat, didn't have a kayak, did a lot of bank fishing, and I was there at a small reservoir in North Austin called Brushy Creek. It had just been compounded, so it was still fairly new water, so it was pretty exciting to get some bank fishing in, and sparked a new love for fishing. And I was sitting there one day and I saw this guy in a kayak, and I'm like, man, that's the way to go. So I went over to Academy, got me my first kayak, and a few months later, I saw a guy there at Brushy Creek, as a matter of fact, with a Diablo. It was actually an Adios, and I'm like, man, I really like that rig. Did a little diving into it, and noticed that they had just launched a rotomold kayak called the Amigo. Ended up getting one of those actually off of Craigslist. And this is something I didn't say earlier, so it might be of interest in this interview.
Yeah,
but
there we go.
my initial intent for kayak fishing, I'm a veteran myself, and I had just gotten back from basic training actually at the time. Believe it or not, I went through basic training at 37 years old. So I had just gotten back, and I wanted something to do, and I wanted to give back to my brothers and sisters. So I wanted to do something for veterans, and I reached out to Diablo Paddlesport. Lo and behold, what I didn't realize was that I knew the owner of the company. I'd actually grown up with him. I was raised with him. We went to church together. Our families knew our families, and as soon as he knew what I wanted to do, next thing I knew, I had a fleet of Amigos and Adios and Choops, and rest is history when it comes to that. That's what kind of got me really hooked on it, and I did that for a lot of years. Cats was going on there in Texas, and I fished a few of their events. Work just didn't allow for me to really be available for the live tournament, so I turned to online fishing, and I did a lot of online tournaments, throughout fishing waters all throughout Texas, just fishing them online. 2015, I got back in the construction industry after getting back from deployment, and found myself in Georgia. Definitely wanted to keep my love for kayak fishing alive, so started looking around, and I think at that time Georgia had really just started to really come on. They'd been around for a few years, but as far as organization, it wasn't quite where you see it today. There were some smaller clubs, so I found them on Facebook. Never really made it out to any of their tournaments, mainly because I realized that there was a gap in anything in my area. I was living in Athens at the time, and wanted to do something for the community, and I created I think it was 2018. I started Classic City Kayak Anglers out of Athens, and we started a small trail. The only problem was that year, about 8 other clubs had really come on board, so Georgia experienced this huge growth. I mean, if you go back to those Facebook pages back then, everybody was saying, what's going on? Everybody and their cat has a new trail this year. But anyway, long story short, that fizzled down. We've got
But
about
they can.
two two main trails now, which are very successful trails, and a lot of the guys that fish those are some really great. Some of our best anglers here in the state of Georgia. But in that time, when I let go of the trail for Classic City, I saw an opportunity. I noticed that the big entities were starting to take interest in what we were doing. We as a community, not just Georgia, and that being B.A.S.S. So I reached out to B.A.S.S and I formed one of the first here in Georgia, the B.A.S.S Nation Club, which then in turn turned into an opportunity to become the director for the state. So we held our first championship last year. Was the only tournament that we had, and we qualified 5 for the national championship that they held there in Texas this year. We only were able to send 3 with the change of date. We lost
Yeah.
2 they weren't available to go in June, so we ended up sending 3 there. And that's one of the nice things about some of the states and how they've got things set up. With the dues and everything, I know a lot of people have their opinions of what they believe they should pay for, to be a part of something. But with us, we went our first year and we did have a state due, and obviously you've got your national due when it comes to B.A.S.S Nation. So you're into it for about $75 a year, full blown. But what that gave our anglers was an opportunity, because we were able to pay their, I believe it was $400 each. We paid their entry fees to Texas. We gave them some gas money, and we gave them some lodging money to go there. And that's where those fees go. And I
Yeah.
think that can be, misconceived sometimes as far as, where it goes. But, for the state of Georgia, I can honestly say with affirmation and full disclosure that all that money goes back to the anglers in some form or fashion. And, the state director here for Georgia, was open armed. He realized that, he's a bass boat guy. But he realized that, we kind of knew and were organized in what we were doing, and he allowed us that free reign. We kind of put together what we needed to put together in our first year, and he just fully supported it. And it was amazing. Watching social media, I noticed where I was listening to some of the horror stories coming out of other states that they were having difficulty in getting organized and getting something going, where I felt blessed here in Georgia, knowing that we had full support of our boat brothers, and we made the best of it. Last year we had just shy of 50 in our first championship tournament. Jason Alford, who's a huge hammer here in Georgia. He's won state championships and the first ever Georgia B.A.S.S Nation Championship. So hats off to him. He's a very good angler. He went to Texas and did his very best, and should definitely be proud of what he did out there. And anyway, that's kind of a nutshell of where we are as far as B.A.S.S Nation.
Well, and that's great insight, especially with we're talking about the cost and the dues. I know there was a lot of anglers. I've talked to a lot of anglers when the prize money came out, the payouts was going to be for the national, and then I couldn't find a single one that was okay with it. But it is what it is.
It is.
I know that B.A.S.S Nation, when it comes to kayak fishing, the National Kayak Series, not talking about your local trail, obviously, Georgia. From what you're telling, it sounds like you're doing it great. You have the flexibility that I think on the national level they don't have yet, and there are shortcomings. You can see them, schedules coming out a little bit late. Sign up time, cutoff times, which actually just changed. Dwayne Bali just announced some changes on that, which I think that's going to help out. Huge shout out to what you do, like what Dwayne Wally's doing, because I know it's you get the lion's share of the blame when things don't go. Nobody, you know, when you're famous tournament director, it's usually not good because that means a lot. When everything goes smooth, you never hear about the tournament director. You
Right.
hear about the anglers winning and putting such a great show, as it should be. But then
Right.
when things go bad, usually everybody remembers the tournament director. So I
Right.
know it's a hard job that you guys have. And some people will say, well, Bass is just getting started. Other people will say, well, it's the biggest name in bass sports, so we should hold it to a higher standard, which it makes sense. The important thing is that the sport is growing, and
Right.
people like yourself that are doing such a great job of being that transparent about where the money goes and helping out the anglers, which at the end of the day are the ones that are have a lot of cost involved, but they're the ones also who are putting up the show. They're the ones who are
Right.
growing the sport.
Right.
When you saw like what Mark Pendergraft did in the national championship, and also Joe McElroy. I think I know his last name is McElroy, but that was a great show. That's one of probably the most exciting um, tournaments out there. Not because it was the national championship for B.A.S S Nation, but because of the show they put in there.
Right.
It was an amazing job. So
Yep.
thank you for being transparent about some of the stuff that goes as far as the dues and the payouts and stuff like that, because there's a lot of things we don't see. We always see the headlines, right? And we make
Right.
form opinions whether right or wrong about the headlines, but we also don't see what goes behind the scenes. So having that peek behind the curtain is something that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with Dwayne and other, national tournament directors, and it's been a challenge to make the
Yeah.
transition, and kind of create or start the marriage with the big entities. And I think what we all have to realize is that it takes time. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to know what's wrong until you realize it's wrong. It's rather than look at something that went wrong, let's look at how that entity reacted and fixed it. And today was a great is a great example, because I did notice Dwayne put up the video regarding that. And that's right there is a good example of Bass listening to its customers. But we also have to realize, as a community, that Bass has been around a long time. FLW, I mean, excuse me, MLF. I get my hand slapped when I keep saying that, but MLF has been around for a while as well. And those entities wouldn't be as successful as they are if they hadn't gotten a process and a procedure in place that made them
Mm.
successful. So I think, as kayak anglers, we need to really kind of evaluate where we are. Because if you look at the grand scheme of things, I was at the first Bass Nation tournament that they had there. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank for where we were. Logan Martin. So I was at Logan Martin. I was there as a spectator, supporting some of our members here from Georgia. But the most profound thing that I took away from that first Bassmaster Classic that we were involved in, the kayak angler were involved in, was that as I sat in that audience, nobody knew anything about kayak angling. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, I was sitting amongst a group of people that were waiting for the big show, and there they were. There our guys were as kayak anglers, walking across the stage, which I was excited for them.
Yeah.
It was a great experience to watch. One of the first ever opportunities for our guys to walk across the stage. But I'll be honest with you, it was kind of lackluster, and I think I
Yeah.
don't blame Bass for that one bit. Here it is; they're giving us an opportunity. It is it was what it was. It wasn't good or bad, but my takeaway from it, rather than it being a negative one, was still positive. It was an opportunity that sparked where we'll end up. And we're still not there yet. But to listen to the audience kind of talk about who are these guys, why are they here? It really it sent home a message to me that here it is. We as a community, we get so tight knit in what we do that we think we're bigger than what we are. And we're a far cry, in my opinion. And I may get a lot of negative feedback for what I'm about to say, but in my opinion, we're a far cry from where we're going to be. And, I
Yeah.
think we have to realize that in anything that grows, it does become a business. And, for those of us who don't necessarily agree with, not having 100% payout in a tournament, or having to pay dues or what have you, it does become a business at some point, and we're starting to get to that point. There's a lot of great trails out there. Hobie and AJ McWhorter, he does a
Yeah.
fantastic job out there. But if you say that Hobie is not about business, then in my opinion you're wrong, because Hobie started that as a business. I'm not saying this in a negative way at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very positive thing because they've got a great tournament. AJ's a great guy, but let's face it, it's all about business. And that goes right down to the sponsorships and the pro staffs, and everybody has their opinions about all of this, but at the end of the day, it's about the dollars. That's what drives us, and continues to help us grow. And we haven't hit that mark yet. As kayak anglers, we don't bring to the table what the bass boat side does. We're not selling $80,000-$100,000 boats. We're selling $5,000 boats at max. So there's not a lot of money there in our industry. We have to look at it and realize that the professionalism needs to start in the kayak community, so that those outside entities, those big bait companies, those rod companies, look at us and say, hey, I can get a return on investment from those guys. But I'll be honest with you, I think, and I'm a huge Facebook troller. My wife will tell you that 100 times. I look at our community and I kind of take a step back sometimes, and I'm like, if I'm a manufacturer, if I'm a guy that's going to invest money into something, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to want to invest it in these guys, because they're unorganized. They seem unhappy. It's a constant negative. I think the negatives are outweighing the positives in what we're doing. I think we all need to step back, realize that we have an opportunity, and start to embrace it, and start to realize that, yes, this is a business. Yes, we do have to have some sort of professionalism to attract these guys from the outside to help us get to that next level. Sorry.
That's a good point. No, that's perfect. You hit the nail on the head, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because there is, like you said, it's okay to expect B.A.S.S Nation to do a better job. That it's okay to expect it. There's different channels, and there's the right way and there's the wrong way. Now, being from a standpoint of a podcast, we have recorded shows where we point out what we think or what we feel could be better. Now, that's very different from attacking somebody's character on social media, right, or just going on a tangent, with profanities because you're upset at something. That's very different. It's okay, if you're gonna make an observation, a constructive criticism, it would have more weight if you offer also an alternative. You say, I don't like the way the payout structure ours is. Okay, what is the way that you like the payout structure is? You want it to be top heavier. You want it to be more inclusive. And there's a way, and then you can go directly to B.A.S S Nation and email them. And sometimes it is okay to put it out there in the media, podcasts, live shows. It's okay to express your opinion, but doing it in a manner that respect, in not in the way it comes out like a whiny little baby on throwing a tantrum because you're not getting your favorite toy. There's different ways to approach this. And going back to what you said, AJ has set the bar high. We've gotten so used to how AJ's running the Hobie B.O.S. And to me, my opinion, it's not flawless, but it's the closest tournament we have that is being as close to perfect as you can think. And there is a business, and there's a question is, what's the take home? And what are we paying out of pocket to support this organization? Everybody's going to have their opinion. But yes, we, thank God for AJ and the work he's doing.
Right.
But at the same time, we're getting very pampered by what they're doing, and maybe we have to realize not everybody's going to run it that way,
Right.
and
Right.
be thankful that the Hobie and Ager are running it the way they are, if that's what you like, and if a lot of anglers, especially tournament anglers, would agree that's one of the best ways. But
Right.
again, it's a point of, especially when it comes to tournament directors, I'm sure you're going to appreciate this. If you're going to address an issue with your tournament director, go one-on-one first, and offer your criticism and offer your alternative solution to what you think it should be run, and do it in a manner that's respectful before going on a tangent on social media.
Right.
I think that's the best way to go about it.
I would agree. And I think, the amount of time and effort that these tournament directors are putting in are actually just volunteering for the most part, because, none of
Yeah.
us are getting paid to do what we do. Unless you're on the national level, then maybe. But even then, it's still, it's still more of a passion than it is, return on your investment of time. So yeah, I think, the huge respect would be to reach out to that tournament director, because at the end of the day, I've never met a tournament director that wanted to disappoint any of its anglers.
Yeah.
I think anything that we've seen on social media was done intentionally by any means, but sometimes it can be misconstrued by the way, like you said, the way it's thrown out there. It's just shotgun blasted out there. There's no, there's only one side to that story, and it could be reflected badly on that tournament director, and it didn't need to. It didn't need to be. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'd like to see more of us as a community get better at. And you nailed it. I don't know of any tournament director that I've ever talked to that isn't approachable, that can't be contacted, and those discussions can happen offline rather than a blast on social media. Because I think that's the one thing that again, being that business person looking outside in, seeing those types of things, just it puts a negative on our community as a whole. And I think we can definitely get better. I'm all about free speech. I love
Mhm.
talking about that. It kind of makes me think of Kayak Bass Nation. I'm not gonna lie, I do get stuck in that sometimes. But again, there are certain things that I think get misconstrued and out of hand. But hey, more
Yeah.
power to you. You know what you're getting into if you're walking into the nation. So,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be offended if you do get offended there. They've done a great job, and I think they're a
Yeah.
huge influencer. So even those guys, they seem very approachable, and honestly, they help our sport in certain
Yeah.
aspects for us to look at and realize, hey, this may be a problem somewhere else, and it hasn't been in mine. Maybe I should look into doing that. But again, I think at the end of the day, you nailed it. Just reach out to your tournament director if you got an issue with something that happened in your local trail, or even your national trail, and just have that discussion before blasting it out there.
Definitely. So you're also involved, Freddie, and more importantly, and I really wanted to bring you on the show to talk about this. You're also involved in youth tournaments, high school and college level. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit
Not
about
so.
that.
So the high school level, my wife and I and David, who's the owner of Coyote Outfitters here in Athens, we started the Georgia High School Kayak Fishing Association. We affiliated with what was then Student Angler FLW and has now become Student Angler MLF. We've affiliated with them to provide opportunities for our anglers to fish the high school world championships and the high school national championships. They host those once a year. It's a huge opportunity for our kids to go and fish for a large sum of scholarship money. It gets them in front of colleges that are recruiting for their bass teams. So huge opportunities at the end of the year during the summer every year with Student Angler. We started last year was our first year. We sent a team to La Crosse, Wisconsin, which I'd love to give a shout out to Cale Henderson and Will Holloway. They were our first team. They went out there and fished against 312 boats and finished 72nd, I believe. So not a bad finish for two guys that they didn't fish any in the boat series that year for high school, merely fishing out of kayaks, and then they jumped into a bass boat and went and fished a river that they knew nothing about. So they did very well out there, and we knew they would. That's pretty interesting, and I'll just talk. I'd like to talk about that later, just the differences in
Yeah.
both kayaks. But so we sent them there last year. We went into our second season this year. And mind you, we did that all through COVID, which was really interesting for us because being our first year, safety's in the forefront of everything we do with the high school kids. When we first started the high school program, we had a ton of volunteers that were basically their coaches. So we'd have volunteers that would show up to the tournaments and they would go out and keep an eye on our kids while they were out there fishing in their spots. Well, when COVID hit, that kind of changed the dynamic. We were going to just, kind of put the season on pause. But rather than that, we listened to our parents and anglers. They wanted to continue on. They realized that kayak fishing could be done virtually, and that's what we did. We went to virtual captains meetings, and we changed the format for our coaches to kind of it parlayed into basically parents taking their kids out, which has been amazing to see these parents getting the opportunity to be in a competitive setting with their kids and just watching them smile as they come off the water and having a great day, whether they caught fish or not, is, very, very satisfying to the whole team. My wife and I, we enjoy watching, those relationships kind of get that opportunity to bud where they may not otherwise, have that opportunity to just get that one-on-one time. So we did that, and we finished out the season. Like I said, we sent Cale Henderson and Will Holloway out to Wisconsin. This year changed a little bit, and we realized that the dynamic was changing. So we allowed the parents to continue to fish with their anglers as long as the anglers handle the fish. There's a rule set put in place there. They're there mainly to keep an eye on our anglers as they're out there on the water. But this year we sent Cale Henderson won the spot again this year. But this year was a little different. He had a different partner, which was his younger brother, who I believe is in 8th grade. And they both went out to Hartwell and fished in the national championship this year and did very well. I haven't had an opportunity to find out where they finished place wise, but they went out there and fished well, caught limits every day, and stuck in there until the final round. I think they were knocked out there at the final round, but it was still exciting to keep tabs on them.
That's pretty cool, and congratulations to those young gentlemen that are doing putting Georgia on the map when it comes to youth tournament. It's interesting because you mentioned something about them fishing kayaks, locally, and then when it goes to the other tournaments, they have to switch to a boat. So, in my opinion, I know we talked about this. Kayak anglers, to me, have an advantage, and I'll let you before I give you my 2 cents. Let me hear what's your 2 cents on what do you think kayak anglers are better than boat, or not necessarily better, but a kayak angler is going to make you a better boat angler. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I had the opportunity. This is the second time this week I've been asked that question. I spoke to a B.A.S.S coach for one of the college teams in Tennessee earlier this week, and he asked me the same question. And to me, it is obviously it's the limitation in space. Where you pick as a kayak angler is pretty much what you have to work. And the question was posed to me of what I thought an advantage on a kayak it would be versus a boater, and I said, well, I can assure you, or I feel confident, and maybe my bias, but whatever. I feel like we can take kayak anglers and put them in a boat, and they will be successful. My reasoning for that is that the successful kayak anglers are able to really understand the area that they choose for that given day, and they will pick that area apart. They will find different ways of enticing those fish in that particular area, that reach that they can get with either a paddle pedal or trolling motor. So to me, to be able to hone your skills and do the best that you can do within a confined area versus that ability to run and gun, I think that's what gives kayak anglers the advantage. And it's funny, we were talking about the national championship for bass earlier, and I think a lot of professional bass anglers took note with what
Yeah.
Mark and the guys were doing out there. I mean, they were I think they were floored when they saw it, and we couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to really showcase, the best of the best, in my opinion. And that's something that Bass has done very well. If anything that I would say was a success for them this year, it was that tournament. It was, they were put on a stage to do well and show out, and I think they exceeded everybody's expectations. So that's the differences in what I feel. I think boat anglers are just as savvy, and there's a different mindset that you have to have coming from a boat in order to be successful. But I ultimately think, in my opinion, if I was asked who I would take, whether I would take odds on a kayak angler or a boat angler, I would definitely put my odds on a kayak.
Yeah, and it's something that's not mentioned enough. A true kayak angler, and I'm not saying that I am at that level, but because I think that's one of the things that I still have to improve in my game. But it's not just learning to pick out the spot, it's choosing a spot. Because again, when you're on a boat, you look overall at the lake and you decide, okay, I'll start here, and if it doesn't work, I'll move here. A kayak angler is going to really have to study. It's really a great kayak angler. That's what separates some of the elites with the rest of the kayak fishing community as far as the tournament scene goes, is they have to spend a lot of time breaking down a lake and dividing them into quarters, or depending how big the lake is, and decide, okay, I've studied the lake. I've looked at the maps. I use the technology that's available to me. I've read the blogs. I read the histories on the lake. And that's the other thing. It's add to that the fact that one part of the lake is going to be great at one time of the year, but it's going to be not so great at another time of the year. So a kayak angler, if it's really want to be successful, he really has to put a lot of work researching where he's going to fish. So a lot of the most important work is before the tournament starts. Because again, you don't have a boat. You can't just say, well, I'll hit this point, I hit this point, I hit this point. No, I'm not going to have time from this point to that point. So which point do I think is going to work better? And there's a lot of research. Let's look at history, where people have catching them, water temperatures, there's a bunch of stuff that a kayak angler has to study. And again, we're talking about the elites. We're comparing the elite kayak anglers with the elite bass boat anglers. In my opinion, because of the work they have to do research, makes them a better angler. They don't have that. We've mentioned it before. They can't move, 20, 40 miles per hour to get to the other side of the lake and fish their spot. To me, it's funny because when I was at the Bassmaster Classic, where they were holding the the finals, as not the lake, but just the expo, where they're showing, the finals, everybody coming and, showing off their fish. And you can see them, they get to the boat, they drive up, with the trailer, get to the live well, lift the bass, and they're, lifting it like, yeah, like the championship belt for WWF.
Right.
And I'm thinking, that's a best at 2 or 3 pounder, man. It's like, if I do that on a kayak tournament, I am going to be shamed. Of like, if I am going out there lifting my bass and yelling, I better have at least an 8 pounder on my hand. If I'm doing that with a 2 pounder, I'll be like, what the heck are you doing, man? It's like, so it was funny to me when I see the guys drive up. It's like, you cannot do that on a kayak fishing tournament. You'd be scorned if you're showing off a 2-pound bass and you think you caught something special. So it's funny. But anyway, so going back to the youth tournament, what are the benefits for parents that are listening to this show or kids that are listening to this podcast? What are the benefits of them trying to get their school enrolled in this? What's in it for them, as far other than having a great time? And how can they get their school involved in it?
Those are two really good questions. The first one, what can they get out of it? As I'd mentioned a little earlier, I was on the phone with one of the college bass fishing team coaches earlier this week, and they are taking note. And I think here in the next few years, we'll start to see that evolution going into colleges. As a matter of fact, we'll probably see it as early as this year, where some of the universities that are very serious in the bass fishing world are going to start hiring coaches for the kayak side. It was a very interesting conversation that I had this week, and it's one that I'm hoping to kind of build on to provide those opportunities, because one of the reasons we started what we did was to provide that opportunity, in whatever means was possible. And right now, currently, it's giving them an opportunity to fish our kayak trail and then flipping to a boat to go fish the national championship with Student Angler Federation to vie and fish for the millions of dollars that they have every year of scholarship money. So that's one of the things that we like to let our bass team, our high school bass teams, know, is that there's that opportunity for scholarship money if someone's willing to put in the time and the effort to become a very solid competitive angler. Those opportunities are there, but I see it on the horizon, and it's close. It's closing on us very quickly. We'll start seeing opportunities for these kids to start getting scholarships for these major bass fishing schools, colleges, and universities. The opportunity to get scholarships from those teams as well. So, to be right now looking outside in, the opportunities are definitely going to be there for the lower classmen. I can't say immediately for seniors and juniors right now, but definitely sophomores, freshmen, and below can look for those opportunities to come up whenever they get ready to graduate from high school. So those are things that we're working on as well. Our association is willing and able to kind of help the progression of the college level and the college series. We hope to be very involved in that and help really grow that from a grassroots level. But it takes people. One of the biggest challenges that my wife and I talk about all the time with David is that it's getting the word out. How do we get how do we let people know that we're out there? It's an easy sell when we finally do get in front of the coaches and the schools. It's just we've had and we've struggled with getting the getting our name out there and getting people to understand what opportunities we can provide their anglers if they're willing to fish out of a kayak.
And I hope this podcast helps in spreading the word, man. It will be honored just to be part of it and help you guys out, because I know you're doing a lot of work that is very gratifying, but it's also very sacrificing,
Right.
and I'm sure you take the gratifying aspect of it and way over the sacrifices that you make.
Right.
So again, huge shout out to what you're doing, and your wife, like you mentioned, is who's also involved with this, and the kids that are taking part of it. Where can people reach out to get more information?
We hope to get better on our social media. That's one thing that as we built, we've just really trying to find people to help out with that, because that's one of those things, as with social media, it's about the keeping it consistent and getting it out there on a consistent basis for people to read and understand. And that's something that we've lacked in the last 2 years, but we're hoping to find volunteers to help us keep that on the forefront of everybody. But the best place to find me, if anyone, the reach of your podcast is large. So any state, if you're interested in starting anything within your state, best thing to do would be if you want help or want my help or suggestions, I'm more than happy to help. I can be reached at our Facebook page, which is Georgia High School Kayak Fishing Association. Drop me a message there. I'll definitely throw out my telephone number and feel free to call me or message me. And if you have any questions or want to get more information on how to get started, because I don't feel like there's anything that limits anyone in any state at this point that might want to volunteer to get something going for these kids, especially knowing that, on the horizon, we have opportunities coming out of the college level to be able to start something even as small as a local Thursday night, Saturday trail, whatever. I think as long as you give them that opportunity and that platform to compete, at any level, is something better than not having it at all. So.
Awesome. So there you go, guys. If you're interested, parents, kids that might be listening to a podcast, there's your chance to reach out and see if you can be part of this. And again, we hope to grow this sport in a way that it's organic, and we usher in the next generation of kayak anglers, and take the sport we to a higher level. We don't want it to get stuck where we are. We want it to keep growing, continue, and generations after that they can enjoy and see how big we can get with this. So again, huge shout out, Freddie, to you and your wife, your family, for doing what you are doing, and hopefully it'll keep growing, and more kids can take advantage of this. It's great opportunity when you, as a parent, able to spend quality time with your kids, have them on a healthy environment, healthy sports out there in nature, and also a good opportunity to solidify his education, and at least from a financial point of view. So great job.
Exactly. Thanks.
So, Freddie, like I like we were mentioning, we started talking, thinking we were recording, and that was my bad. But I wanted to ask you real quick, without keeping you too long, the difference between fishing in Texas and fishing in Georgia, because we think, as Texas, big bass capital of the United States, we often forget a guy by the name of George Perry in, I think, 1932 caught the biggest bass to date in the United States. I think it was something like 22 pounds on Lake Montgomery. So, I mean, there's huge bass to be found in Georgia. Am I right? Or how does it compare to Texas?
I think there's those opportunities. Whether or not I've found those waters at this date, I definitely say I have not. But the one interesting thing to me is it's been fishing in Texas. 19 inches, 20 inches. You can find the waters and find those fish. Relative. I don't mean to undermine it and say that it's easy, but having fished in Georgia here in the last 3 years, I can definitely say for me, it's easier. That's where my hats will go off to all these anglers here on the East Coast. There's so much diversity in the waters, and just the bottoms are different. The cover is different. It's any given section of the state, you can be thrown a curveball and have to really adjust. So for that matter, I would say that it doesn't surprise me that we have so many great anglers come from the East Coast. And I'm not taking away from Texas. I think we've got, Texas has some great anglers there as well.
Yeah.
But I think as far as, what it takes to catch big fish in Texas versus Georgia, hands down, I'd like my odds in Texas versus Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia is it's a very huge outdoor state, as Texas is as well. But I think it takes it just a little bit above, where you've got a lot of pressure in tournaments and recreational fishing that makes it very difficult to kind of cultivate what we see or what I've seen in Texas. So it's not surprising to me that the fish aren't in abundance of large here. But you still you can find those waters that are very good, and you get some big ones, because I'm a huge Facebook troller, and I've seen some guys here in Texas got some pretty good size ones. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's Texas, it's the coin phrase, it's always bigger in Texas, does apply to bass fishing. I tell you that.
I'm not trying to be biased, but in my opinion, it does. Especially living in Austin, man. I miss going out to Lake Austin, and I knew if I was doing it right, I was easily going to pull in. I could pull in a 19-incher on any given day. And I'm not trying to talk. That doesn't make
no,
me
it is.
It just makes me, an opportunist who takes advantage of a great fishery. So.
No, it is. I for the Save JT tournament, Tourney X, I was fishing my way out. It got hot, and the water temperatures at that creek was like, I think it was 89 degrees. So I was like, I'm just gonna fish my way out, and I'm gonna start throwing a jackhammer, just because. Not that I think it was gonna work. I was thinking I just want something, I can make multiple quick casts while I'm, paddling back to the boat ramp, and I figured it's probably not going to work. It's this is not the bait for this conditions. But if I can hit one in the nose, maybe I'll be lucky. If I get multiple tasks and I just pinpoint my cast where I think there might be a bass, I may just hit one in the nose and boom, there it is. But I wasn't expecting, because I figured this is not what I would do if I was actually on a live tournament. It was just I'm fishing my way out. Let's do it. And sure enough, I hit one right in the nose, 21 incher. Oh, wow. Now I did throw it right at the spot where I wanted to. I wasn't a lucky cast. And I figured there should be a bass in that spot, but it was one of those things where it's like, I wasn't really like honing in on one specific skill. I was just, getting my way out, and I figured, well, might as well keep casting while I'm leaving to the boat ramp. And and you catch a 21 incher. It's true. I mean, I'm at best a mediocre kayak angler. I'll tell you that right now. And maybe I'm a little better, but I'll just say I think I'm just mediocre. And I still constantly think I can get 18, 19, an occasional 20 incher. So if I can do it, anybody can do it in Texas, honestly.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I've said it on several podcasts, and I'm thinking, well, maybe people are thinking I'm crazy, but yeah, it's been a challenge. My hats off to these guys, because they will go out and put some numbers up in any given day, and for a lot of these tournaments, it's just a huge. It doesn't matter where we're at, reservoir, lake, here in Georgia. There's just so much tournament activity in John boats and bass boats and kayaks. So, for them to pull the numbers that they do, my hats definitely go off to them. I'm like, man, you must have a sweet spot, or you've done a ton of research to know what you're doing. And, again, it's all about the work that they put in to begin with, and go out there and be successful on any given Saturday.
Yep. Look at McElroy, came up second in the B.A.S.S Kayak Nation Series, the national championship, 208 on 2 days, and he came up second. Right. Jody Quinn on the KBF Trail on Saturday, it was in April, came up second, and he had 109 inches. And he came up second to Guillermo Gonzalez, who had 110. So it's Texas. It's like, what can we say?
All right.
100 inches here will get you at best third place on most tournaments. Exactly. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, Freddie, like I said, between the time we were recording without hitting the record button and the time we've been talking, I've had you more than an hour. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come up to the show and, spread the words on B.A.S.S Nation in Georgia, and on, more importantly, the youth tournaments, both in high school and college. Hopefully we'll get the word out and get some more schools involved with this. Scholarships will be bit better, and the sports will keep growing and ushering a new generation. Before I let you go, Freddie, I wanted to give you a chance to thank anybody you want to thank, any companies that sponsor what you're doing, anybody else that you might want to thank.
I'd like to thank Westbrook Supply out of Atlanta for being a huge supporter of the high school side of things, as well as Coyote Outfitters in Athens. They've been wonderful in helping us with prize packs and taking care of the kids as far as handing them discounts for being a high school angler and going in and purchasing kayaks, as well as Big Bear Fishing Rods. That Rob over there has been supportive of everything we've done, and I can't thank him enough for what he does for us. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to our B.A.S.S Nation sponsors, because without them, a lot of things aren't possible, and especially this shop that I'm about to mention, Dugout Bait and Tackle out of Marietta. Jamie Koza and his team are phenomenal. I mean, the guy I can't thank him enough for what he's done for our sport. He's just a man who's very he's an honorable guy, and he just wants to give back to the community, and he does so in huge volume. I can't thank him enough. And also Shane Coulter out of Automotion Customs here in Georgia. They've been a huge supporter for B.A.S.S Nation as well. And again, without these guys, we can't do what we do on the tournament director side. Fishhead is another sponsor that I'd like to definitely throw a shout out to. They've really stepped up on the high school side and helped us with prizes for every tournament. So it's been wonderful to have them on board. I know I'm forgetting some, but those are the ones that really I truly appreciate and admire and what they do for our sport. So, hit them up and support them and what they do, because they are smaller shops, and every bit helps. So, like them on Facebook and follow them. They're doing great things.
Definitely. So thanks to all of them for supporting you and the great things that you are doing. So Freddie, thank you so much again for joining us. If for those out there listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Douglas Rods, my sponsor. Go check them out, douglasoutdoors.com. Check out their full lineup. Find your nearest dealer or online dealer. So again, thanks you to Freddie. If you're going to be out there on the water, guys, please wear your PFD. Stay safe. Make sure you make it back to your home, to your family. Have a great day, everyone.
This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
Yak Gadget, made in America, based outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Yak Gadget offers all kinds of storage accessories, quick mount motor mounts, anchor systems, track mounted accessories, even paddles. Go to yakgadget.com and get your kayak decked out for your next trip out on the water.
The 153 Bait Company, based in Troy, Ohio, make everything from plastics to custom painted hard baits. Hook 'em hard and hook 'em often. All of our baits are made to order, and all of our hard baits are hand painted to order. So go to the153anglers.com to place your order today.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and-fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and-fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.